In my absence, I was planning a video on Duel of the Fates, a piece of Star Wars music that always makes me want to jump up and swing a lightsaber around. It's really kind of embarrassing, but I'm sure many watching feel the same. In the course of planning for that video, I came across another piece of Star Wars music that has given me that same level of excitement. Called Vodeon, it was made for the game Republic Commando, a game which I played often as a young Star Wars fan. This song is epic, and it features lyrics in Mandalorian which describe the unity of the clone army as brothers forged in the fires of war. One of the things that stuck out from the lyrics is some of the unsettling implications these lyrics provide. There are examples that can be seen as foreshadowing Order 66 and the elimination of the Jedi Order by their hand. This got me thinking about how much I dislike the introduction of the inhibitor chip in the Clone Wars. So, from what I can tell, the inhibitor chips as a plot device are used to try to resolve a type of dissonance that had been building through the entire run of the Clone Wars series, that being how the clone troopers were more humanized and seen as actually good, along with the tight bonds that many of them made with their Jedi generals. The solution was to make Order 66 a compelled action through a brain chip given to every clone at birth. Now, I can see how this makes sense from a practical writing standpoint. It allows the writers to not only develop the relationships between the Jedi and the clones, but it also opens up possibilities for new stories about how the clones grapple and deal with this bioengineering that essentially turns them into executioners for the Sith. I understand the reasoning behind this creative choice, but I do lament what was lost in order to make that choice a reality. At the time of the release of Revenge of the Sith, the plot device of Order 66 was criticized for being a type of lazy writing to just tie up loose ends. That being said, the Order 66 scene in the movie was also widely praised for the artistry of it all. The music, combined with the darker tone, was a highlight of the otherwise disappointing film. From 2005 until the chips were introduced in 2013, the assumption that everyone had was that the clones were conscious and aware of their future betrayal of the Jedi from the very beginning. Fans, including myself, took this idea for granted, but now that it's been redefined by this inhibitor chip, many fans, myself included, miss the unsettling and haunting implications of the previously assumed awareness of Order 66 on the clones' end. I feel that the idea of the clone army being aware and essentially preparing for Order 66 for the entire Clone Wars paints a much darker and more intriguing picture of what the clones were like, their discipline and loyalty being so deeply rooted that it has multiple layers. An army essentially of double agents makes the clones much more threatening and terrifying. Alfred Hitchcock once talked about a hypothetical scene of two people sitting at a table, and out of nowhere a bomb explodes and kills them both. Now, that's not necessarily scary, more just shocking. However, Hitchcock goes on to describe that if you start the scene by telling the audience that a bomb under the table will go off in 10 minutes, the suspense elevates the tension and fear. Much in the same way, the clones being mostly unaware of Order 66 removes any tension you could have built in the Clone Wars series. One example of this tension is by doing a similar arc to the one that introduces the inhibitor chips, but instead of a clone trooper unraveling this conspiracy, it's a Jedi. The clones then have to steer their general away from the truth, and perhaps it would end with the Jedi being set up to die in battle, so that way they can't tell the Council their findings. And you can still show Yoda and the rest of the Council being very skeptical, suspicious, and concerned as to what fate might await their Jedi Order. In the arc we got, the clones are the ones trying to make sense of this conspiracy, the inciting incident being the inhibitor chip in one clone malfunctioning and triggering Order 66 early. This whole premise introduces an issue with the inhibitor chips, being that they could malfunction. I know we only see one do that, but I guess the Kaminoans were lucky that those inhibitor chips didn't have a 50% failure rate like the first model of the Xbox 360, otherwise Palpatine's entire plan is foiled. Taking away the clone troopers' agency in Order 66 with the inhibitor chip makes the clones less threatening, as essentially it just turns them into droids. There's too much room for error in leaving Order 66 to a secret brain chip as opposed to every clone in the Republic choosing to be loyal to the point of killing their Jedi generals. Sure, there could be a clone that chooses not to execute Order 66 or chooses not to go along with it, but I'm sure the rest of the entire army plus Palpatine would have a much easier time dealing with that clone without having to worry about the physical evidence that that clone could so easily produce. Well, I've gone over a lot of my thoughts in this video. The main reason I'm not a fan of the inhibitor chip is because it takes some of the mystery out of Star Wars. I'm not the type of fan who needs an explanation for every single point in canon, and I think there are many cases where it's better to let the audience's mind wander. Order 66 and the Clones is one such case for me, and in retrospect, I miss being able to speculate and let my mind wander as to just how they got every single clone to go along with it.
The time has come. Execute Order 66.
Yes, my lord.
While I think it's pretty much played its course at this point, I've really enjoyed the additional development that Order 66 has gotten recently in Star Wars media. These new stories have elevated this event to be monumental in the story of Star Wars. Like I said, I understand why it was done, but the inhibitor chip's inclusion is one piece of lore that reinforces why I want Lucasfilm to scale back on Star Wars content big time. That would give us much more time for each story to fester in our minds and open up the audience's imagination, elevating the story far beyond anything you could possibly imagine.